that's not the way that we're approaching this market if we're here to actually win. I'm not playing to not lose, I'm playing to win. This is going to sound a little backwards, but one of the biggest advantages in the sports card market is knowing when to overpay on purpose. And in this video, we're going to talk through when this makes sense, when it doesn't make sense, and the logic behind it so that you can potentially use this to gain an edge in your own sports card investing. Now, if you're new here, I'm Ryan Seaver. I'm a longtime card investor. I always thought the learning curve in this market sucked, and so I wrote a best-selling book and run a program and make content like this to help newer investors get on their feet and hopefully skip some of the mistakes that I had to learn the hard way. Okay, let's dive in. So when I'm trying to figure out what to pay for a card that I'm investing in, I'm looking at two things, the past and the future. And so for the past, what I'm looking at is comps. So comps are recent sales of the same or similar cards. And what we can do is look at what the market has paid for this card in the past to help us try to gauge what the value might be today. So there's actually someone I need to introduce you to real quick. This is the comp police. And his job is to arrest you and take you to prison if you ever, and I mean ever, pay outside of comps. Okay, that doesn't exist, right? And that isn't a thing. But there's so many people in the sports card market that act that way, that act like they can never go outside of comps no matter what. There's just way too much value put on past sales, which really don't even matter anymore. Past sales are in the past. They don't actually dictate what the current market is for a particular card. For example, when Shohei Ohtani hit 3 home runs and struck out 10 batters in the NLCS, do you think that the comps from yesterday still mattered after that performance? No, right? Like, no way. The market has changed. And so we had all this history from what sales had been in the past, but that game changed the market, right? Things are different now because we now have seen something different that people are willing to pay more money for. So, of course, that's an extreme example of this, but this happens all the time. And so over relying on comps is basically accepting that you are living in the past. And that is not how card investors who are successful think. And that brings us to the second piece of my card valuation process here, which is looking at the future and trying to understand the upside of a card before I make that investment. Now, I would argue that you should be doing this no matter what anyway. Like, if you can explain why the card's value is going to rise and when you think it's going to happen, I don't know what you're doing if you're trying to make money on this thing, right? Like, you've got to have a realistic investing thesis and a timeline attached to when you think it's going to happen, or else you're just kind of hoping for the best. But then when you have those things, when you have a compelling why and a compelling when, use that. That's part of the strategy, is looking at your investing thesis and understanding, okay, I think that this is the upside of this card. Well, that's going to also inform the price that I'm willing to pay for this card. So to give you a hypothetical example here, let's say I think a card is worth $100 based on comps. But then if I look at the upside and I think that the upside is $200 or $250. Maybe I think it's a strong grading play and there's $300 or $400 of upside potentially built into this card. That tells me that, okay, that $100 might be current market value, but with the strategy that I'm rolling out here, why would I let $5 or $10 stop me from potentially making $200, $250, $300, $400? And so I'm not just looking at the past, I'm looking at the future, and I'm weighing those two things. I'm looking at how likely do I think that future scenario is, and then that becomes part of what I'm paying for the card. And so the two pieces here again are the past, looking at comps, but then the future, looking at projections and where you think the card's value can go. Now, where the strategy comes in here is being willing to go outside of comps when you see a projection that looks way more promising than what the recent comps suggest. So a couple of examples for when this might be appropriate. Buying a baseball player in the dead of the winter, dead of the offseason, the market's down a little bit. It's a player that I think is on the upswing, that's got a chance to make some noise going into spring training and going into the new season. And so I've got a pretty strong idea that this is a player whose value will likely rise in the next couple of months here. And so if I can find a rarer card, like a gold refractor out of 50, Bowman Chrome Auto or something that you don't necessarily see every day, and that card is listed at auction, and I'm trying to figure out what to set my max bid at, well, I'm looking at comps and trying to gauge, like, what has this card sold for in the past? But then I'm also considering, okay, if I think that this card is $350 today, but in the next couple of months, it's probably going to rise to $500, $600 based on the market that I'm seeing for this player. why would I not be willing to bid a little bit more to make sure that I lock in that copy of the card, especially knowing that it's a rarer card where I'm not going to have a chance at that card again, most likely between now and the start of the season. Like, this is my chance. If I want to get it, I've got to go get it. And so if I'm over here saying like, yeah, the last one was 300, so I'll go 285, like, grow a backbone. And if you're confident about something, take a stand and go for it. And I'll caveat, you've got to have a strong investing thesis here, because if you're just randomly overpaying for no reason, yeah, you're going to lose money on that. But if you see bigger upside than that, and overpaying by a few dollars isn't going to just put you out on the street or something, that's where I've had a lot of success of putting my money on the table and making sure I lock in that card when the opportunity to lock it in is there. Second example of this is grading. And so I'll give you a recent example here. I identified a card that was selling for about $35 to $40 ungraded. Let's just call it 40 for easy math. But it was selling for around 300 as a PSA 10. And so I looked on eBay, and what I saw was a bunch of ungradable copies, like off center, corner issues, a bunch of copies that just weren't clean. But I found 2 copies that were listed at auction that did look like they were clean. They were perfectly centered. I couldn't tell any surface damage, any corner wear, anything like that. And so I looked at this and said, okay, hold on. Yes, they're selling for $40 ungraded, but the grading upside here is 300 if they get a PSA 10. And so I'm over here thinking about, all right, what do I set my max bid to? Well, if I'm the person that's boxed into comps, I'm probably looking at those $40 sales and saying, how about $32.50 to make sure I get a good deal? And then that way, if they're not gradable, then I can sell them and still get my money back. I'm just like, grow up. That's not the way that we're approaching this market if we're here to actually win. I'm not playing to not lose. I'm playing to win. And so I'm looking at this and saying there's big upside. Let me go above comps on these cards that I feel super confident have a really strong chance. Now, it's not always going to work out, and that's okay. I'm willing to take a chance on a card that I feel really confident is in good condition based on everything I can tell from the listing, and when there's huge upside attached to the grade. And so one of the cards I was extremely confident in, I put a $77 bid in, and I ended up winning that card for about $71. So apparently other people were thinking the same thing I was. The second card I was not as confident, and I put in a $68 bid, and I ended up winning that one for $60. So I'm into these 2 cards for $131. Let's just take the average and say I'm into them for about $65 each, plus the $20-ish of grading, plus a few dollars of shipping. So let's just call it $90. So I paid above comps to lock in these 2, what I thought were clean looking copies of this card. Now here's what happened. So the 2 cards came in the mail. I inspect them. They both look super clean. Perfect. Now the grades came back, and on the first card, I got a PSA 9. Now that sucks because PSA 9s were selling for $50. I'm into this card for $90. I'm going to take a big loss on that, right? And so I sold the card, and after all fees and everything, I lost about $50 on that card. Not ideal. But here's the thing. The second one got a PSA 10. And so that card's value shoots up to $300 just like that. And so after the selling fees and everything, I netted about $255 on that card. And so that means on the 2 cards combined, I ended up netting about $295 worth of actual net sales, like money that went back into my bank account after all fees. Now then you subtract the $180 we paid for the cards plus the grading fees, and I was left with a net profit of $115. Not terrible for just 2 cards, right? Another example of a time when I like to overpay is when I'm looking at a card that I think is so dramatically undervalued by the market that there's opportunity even if I'm going quite a bit above the recent sales. And so I'll tell you a story about this. I'll take you back a few years here. I actually talk about this one in my book on page 32, but AJ Reed is a name that probably doesn't sound familiar to very many of you, unless you were prospecting baseball cards in the 2010s or were a Houston Astros fan potentially. But this guy was the college player of the year at Kentucky. Then he went to the Astros farm organization and just mashed. He hit so many home runs. High batting average, high OPS, all the things you want to see from a hitting prospect. And when his Bowman Chrome autograph came out in 2014 Bowman Chrome draft, I was fully expecting to have to pay $30 to $35 a piece for these things. Instead, they were selling for $8 to $12. I was like, what am I missing here? This guy is an incredible talent and no one is seeing it yet. And so there was a stretch in early 2015 there where I won literally every single one of those cards. Like, I'm not talking about some of them. I'm talking about I won 100% of the auctions for a couple of months solid there because the base autos were so much lower than they should have been, in my opinion. The color autos, like the blue refractor autos, were like $40 when I was expecting those to be $100 raw. So the value just made so much sense to me that I was happy to put in a bid way above recent sales, and I won most of them for quite a bit less. And eventually people started to catch on as markets started climbing and I stopped buying when they went beyond my price. But by that time I had accumulated so many of these cards that I had just a massive stash, and I graded most of them and they graded super well that year too. So I ended up making an absolute killing on this guy, all while he was still in the minors, just because I believed so strongly in the value and was willing to go outside of comps to continue to win those cards until they went above what I thought was true fair market for them. And so then he goes to the major leagues, doesn't ever really get established and kind of fizzles out. But by that time I had long since sold out of his inventory. Now I can't promise the same thing's going to happen for you because I just don't know if you're going to find that type of an opportunity. But this is just to illustrate that those types of plays are out there. Now, we don't just want to randomly overpay all the time for everything, right? So when does this actually make sense to do? Well, when we have a super strong investing thesis, we know that there's giant upside attached and we can pay a price that still leaves tons of meat on the bone. That's a play where I'm pretty happy to overpay by a little bit. Now, if I overpay by too much, then I'm cutting into the potential profit. And you got to remember, it's still just potential profit until it actually happens. And so there's no guarantees here. We're still taking a risk anytime we're investing in anything. So the better price you can get, you're still going to be better off if you can pay less for the same thing. The second reason is if you have a limited number of chances at a card. If it's a rarer card where you know that there's upside, but you don't think you're going to have another shot at it, sometimes you got to stretch to lock that thing in while it's available. Now let's touch on real briefly when this doesn't make sense. Well, think of the opposite, when you don't have a strong investing thesis or when there's not a lot of meat on the bone. So that is a scenario where I would absolutely not be willing to overpay for a card. Another one is when a card is extremely common. So I'm not really looking to overpay on cards that you can go find 1,000 of them at market price. It doesn't make sense to overpay for that because you can probably just go and find another copy or wait 5 minutes until another one's listed and then pay market price for that. And so here are the learnings on this. I like to think of comps as a reference point. We can use them to help inform our decisions, but they do not define the market. And if you go outside of comps, there truly is not a comp policeman waiting to arrest you. You're gonna be okay. Secondly, we've got to consider more than just comps. We have to look at the future and what is the actual upside of the card that we're pursuing. Because if we're skipping that and overlooking that, we're never going to get into enough inventory to actually make any real moves in this space. And don't get me wrong, I love saving money too, but I'm just looking at this aggressively because I know when I have a winning strategy in mind that there is way more upside on there than there is downside, and I'm okay with living with that risk. Now, this isn't something I do on every single purchase, but when you're able to look beyond what the average person is seeing and you live by different rules than what the average investor lives by, it gives you an advantage when you at least have permission to do something that most people never give themselves permission to do. And by the way, if you get value from this type of card investing strategy and framework, we talk about this stuff all the time in my private card investing community. It's called Ignite. We've got over 100 card investors learning and leveling up and winning together. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see full details, but otherwise, we'll see you on the next video.